Hey everyone, welcome back to The Explainer. I'm absolutely thrilled you're tuning in today because we're tackling a really incredible theme: how we, as a species, preserve our history and our artifacts. We're going to bridge two seemingly different worlds today: the highly commercial global book marketplace and the dense academic world of historical bibliographies. By putting these sources side by side, we're going to see exactly how meticulous the human drive to record, preserve, and archive really is. All right, let's dive right in. 100 million. Just let that number sink in for a second. That represents the total number of books currently circulating right now on Biblio, which is the world's largest independent book marketplace. It's mind-boggling when you try to wrap your head around that sheer scale of global archiving. That is 100 million physical, tangible artifacts being actively tracked, graded, priced, and shipped around the world at this very moment.
So, here's our roadmap for today. We'll kick things off by looking at the Global Book Archive, then move into grading tangible history. From there, we'll shift gears into tracking cultural exchange, artists in the East, and dive into the Bloomsbury China letters before wrapping up with preserving our heritage.
All right, let's jump right into Part 1, the Global Book Archive and tracing a classic tale. Let's start at the micro level. Think about a single universally beloved story, like Alice in Wonderland, and how it circulates around the globe. On the surface, it's just a kid's story, right? But when you look at it through the lens of an archive, it actually splinters into countless completely unique artifacts. You've got everything from a recent picture book going for around $3, all the way up to a 1951 Adventures from the Original Alice, published by Wonder Books, priced closer to $10. It just goes to show how something as simple as a mass-produced book transforms into a highly tracked historical artifact, with its value tied directly to its own unique physical journey.
Moving on to our next section, let's talk about grading, tangible history, and meticulous preservation.
So how exactly do booksellers communicate the condition of these tangible objects when they've been floating around for decades? Well, the commercial archival system is incredibly precise, literally down to the millimeter. Take the grade of fine, for instance. For a book to snag this grade, it has to exhibit absolutely no flaws, zero. It closely approaches an as-new condition. It might just lack that super crisp feel of a volume that has literally never been opened. It's basically a state of near-perfect preservation.
But then, contrast that with the grade of good. Now, a good book is your average, well-loved, used copy. It's got all its pages, sure, but it often comes with the baggage of a previous owner. Writing in the margins, some highlighters. There's actually a great little aphorism in the collecting world: good isn't very good. I absolutely love that. It's such a perfect reminder of how incredibly uncompromising the archivist's eye really is.
To really see this level of detail in action, let's look at the condition report for a 1955 Purnell & Sons edition of Alice. Just listen to this language for a second. We're talking about a non-structural split to the rear joint covering, lightly bumped corners, a gift notation inside the front cover, and pages that are very clean but with lightly age-toned margins. Wow! Every single scuff, every slightly bent corner, every tiny sign of human interaction from 1955 to today, it is thoroughly and precisely recorded. It's almost forensic, isn't it?
And this brings us to the major thematic pivot for today's explainer. Because just as commercial archivists are out there meticulously grading the wear of a physical book's spine or its age-toned pages over decades, academic archivists are doing the exact same thing with human experiences. They are meticulously tracking the lives, the artistic influences, and the profound cross-cultural footprints of historical figures across centuries.
Which leads us perfectly into Section 3, Tracking Cultural Exchange in the Academic Archive.
So now we're shifting gears from the micro world of a single book to the massive macro world of scholarly bibliography. Let's look at how history tracks a human journey. This timeline traces the English painter William Alexander. In 1792, he travels with the British Macartney Embassy all the way to Beijing. By 1793 and 94, the embassy heads out of Beijing, traveling down through Tianjin and Hangzhou to Shusan. And finally, in 1794, Alexander spends 2 solid months just waiting in Macau. Historians track these movements just as precisely as a bookseller tracks the publication date of a vintage novel.
But hey, it's not just about dates on a calendar, right? The archive also captures the things that left a deep, lasting impression on the human mind. The scholarly records actually note the highly specific visual details that impacted Alexander's artwork during his trip. We're talking about the shining yellow gold roofs of the imperial palaces in Beijing, the vivid blue tones of the mandarin's court clothing, the bustling, energetic, everyday scenes of river and canal life. The archive literally preserves the exact colors and scenes that caught a painter's eye over 200 years ago.
All right, moving right along to Section 4, Artists in the East and Mapping Architecture.
This kind of meticulous tracking builds even further when we get into the 20th century. Because it wasn't just painters being archived, it was people mapping the very architecture of the land itself. Take the German architect Ernst Borschmann, for example. Our sources outline the incredibly rigorous steps of his expeditions. Step 1. He serves as a building inspector in China from 1902 to 1904. Step 2. He comes back from 1906 to 1909 and travels through a staggering 14 provinces, specifically to sketch and photograph temples, pagodas, and tombs. And then Step 3, a massive final research trip in 1933, going all the way from Guangzhou to Shanxi. The sheer scale of his physical archiving of Chinese architecture was just monumental, and the bibliography preserves his life's work, step by step.
And that brings us to Section 5, the Bloomsbury China Letters, where we look at archiving emotion.
Because, archives don't just track buildings or politics or diplomacy. They also track deeply personal, incredibly intimate human relationships. This is a wonderfully emotional archival story. Back in 1935, the English poet Julian Bell, who was part of the famous Bloomsbury Group and, fun fact, the nephew of Virginia Woolf, took a professorship at Wuhan University. While he was there, he sparked this profound, dramatic connection with the brilliant Chinese writer Ling Shuhua. And the letters preserved from this era, they are just unbelievably vivid.
Through these archived letters, we get Julian Bell's immediate, totally visceral reactions to the Chinese landscape. In February of 1936, he writes to his mother, Vanessa Bell, saying, "I really could live very happily in Peking, but I think I prefer Charleston." You can practically hear the internal tug-of-war right there on the page, can't you? It's the awe of an entirely new world battling it out with the comfort of his English home.
And what's amazing is how these letters act as this incredible cultural glue. In the fall of 1936, Julian writes to his aunt, the legendary Virginia Woolf, about Ling Shuhua. He tells her, "China's leading woman writer, my dean's wife, with whom I'm platonically in love, is a passionate admirer of your work." So just through the postal service, the literary elite of London's Bloomsbury was directly bridging minds with Chinese academia. How cool is that?
And the archive captures the imagination of that era so perfectly through Virginia Woolf's response to Julian Heisey in May of 1936. Reacting to his stories, she writes back, "I feel instinctively that China is a little like a blue pot, love a little flowery, leaning a little scented." It's a completely artistic, wildly imaginative response. These letters, they are essentially the bumped corners and the age-toned pages of the human soul. They are preserved emotions.
Which brings us to our final section, preserving our heritage and the archives of tomorrow.
So let's pull all these threads together. The absolutely crucial point here is this: humans have an innate, deeply structured desire to preserve our heritage. The exact same painstaking care that a bookseller uses to grade a tiny little split in the spine of a 1955 Alice in Wonderland book, that is the exact same care a historian uses to track the artistic footprints of William Alexander or the emotional heartbreaks of Julian Bell in the 1930s. It is all part of one giant, fascinating human archive.
Which leaves me with a final thought for you to ponder today. We are all generating data, leaving behind objects and writing messages every single day. So whether it's a physical object sitting on your shelf right now or a quick text message to a friend, what aspects of your own life do you think will end up in the archives of tomorrow? Thanks so much for joining me on The Explainer today. Keep learning and keep asking questions.